Welcome back to part 2 on the 2001 Suzuki RM125. As you guys know, last video I picked this thing up for $1,200, a couple of videos ago actually, and we got back home. The guy bought it for $3,000 and he blew it up in 2 rides. So something happened. We've got the old parts over here. Let's take a look. The piston had some little dings in it all over the place. A lot of people in the comments said the timing was advanced too much, and that's what would cause that, or he was running crappy gas, which could also cause that. The cylinder looks good, no scratches on the cylinder. We're still going to hone that out, obviously. Every time you install a new piston, which we're going to do today, you should hone out the cylinder. And to hone this out, you actually have to take apart the whole cylinder, because you don't want honing particles in the power valves, which are down there. See those? A lot of people make that mistake. They hone it out and don't clean it well enough. I've done it before in the past as well. And that piston locks up pretty much instantly as soon as it starts. Those particles are sucked in and it just scratches up the cylinder wall and the piston. So we're definitely going to clean that out and make sure everything's good before we do that. The head actually looked really good. No dings in the head. Nothing wrong with the head. We lucked out there. Clutch was good. Transmission was good, but we found out that the guy had JB welded the case right here. There's a bunch of JB weld. I ground it down, and he just covered up the oil drain plug. You can see the hole right here, kind of where it was, but it was all cracked and crappy. And I reached out to a couple companies asking if they could weld this up, and a lot of them recommended not to, saying it would probably crack in the same spot. So we decided to get a brand new case. And when you're buying cases, unfortunately you have to buy both of them as a set. So when they manufacture these, they manufacture them as a set. So this side, this right side case, matches this one perfectly. So if you buy a case from a different one, they're not going to match up perfectly, and it could cause your transmission to lock up. It can cause a lot of different problems. We ended up buying a used bottom end out of a running bike. The guy said it was mint in the description. We'll check it out today. He said crank, rod, everything was perfect on this thing. I spent a lot of money on it. This thing was $875 bucks. So 900, I think it came to 900 something, including tax and fees and all that fun stuff. So here it is. Yeah, that rod feels good in there. No wobble at all. And this looks like the stock rod and crank. So the one we had in it before was a hot rods. You can see. So a lot of people said in the comments also that these are junk, and you should never put one of those in. So that could be another problem. But we found out that the roller bearing for the top was also seized. So something got really hot and seized everything. The rod bearing was just gone. Seized that thing tight. So that was the main problem. The rod bearing seized. So hopefully this will take care of our problem. It came with both cases enclosed. It looks like the case halves are together still. I don't think they were ever taken apart. Looks like they're still sealed up, so we'll put everything back together just like this. Everything looks pretty good. We'll check it over, make sure it goes through all the gears, make sure everything's good before we put everything back together on this thing. We also got a new piston for it. I've had very good luck in the past with the Pro X piston. So on these particular pistons, I believe you have to drill holes in the piston where the skirt goes. We'll have to check and see. But that was another problem with this bike over here. When you have a bridge on the skirt right here, on the cylinder, you always want to drill holes in the piston. It provides extra lubrication for that spot, because that spot likes to flex and tighten up. And if you don't have the proper lubrication, you are going to score your piston, and it will seize to that cylinder. So today's plan is to get everything back together and ride this bike for the first time. I guess we'll see how that goes. Alright, so it looks like there is a gasket in there, a center gasket on this one. So that looks good. Let's see if everything spins smoothly on it. Sounds good. Now, you don't want any play up and down in the rod. A little back and forth, side to side is fine. So you can see it moves a little side to side. You don't want too much play. And up and down, there's zero play up and down. So we are good there. No rust on the crank. Crank looks perfect. The case looks perfect. No dings on the case. No wear through spots from the kicker or the shifter. And most importantly, the oil drain bolt looks good. No metallic flakes in there. Yeah, it looks completely spotless in here, so I think we're gonna be all set to go. All right, we're gonna start with the right side of the machine here. Get the shift rod in, or the shift shaft, I should say. All right, I went ahead and attached the shifter lever and went through all the gears. Everything looked good. We are going to now make sure all the bolts are tight before going any further. Just do a once over. That one was not tight, so it's a good thing we're tightening these up. That was tight. We just don't want anything coming off and wrecking our brand new rebuild engine. See if this one's tight. That one was tight. All right, the power valve rod that triggers the power valves to come on. We're getting that in. So for this one, because there's a bearing, we're gonna use some assembly lube. Put a little bit in there, a little bit on the bearing in there. That was a little too much, that's okay. Just gonna stick that up in there and we'll get that on. So with this one, we want to use some Loctite for the small screws that go in there. We don't want those rattling loose, causing problems. So we'll put a little blue Loctite on. Okay, next part before we put the clutch on is the kickstart mechanism. So there's like a little tab right here that's going to sit behind the tab up here in the corner. See the tab right here? And that little guy is going to sit right behind there. And then you want to make sure your spring, I'll show you. See that hole in there in the shaft? That spring sits in there. And there's a little cutout right there that goes over the spring. Keeps that in place. So let's install this. You're gonna have that click in like that, and then that's gonna go into that hole right here. It's wound up pretty tight. Here's the bearing. Just going to lube that up inside and outside. That goes on like that. After that is the basket that goes on. got your washer. And then you have your nut that goes on after that. And we'll torque that down. Alright, we flipped up the tabs on the nut, so those are in place. Let's get the rest of the clutch in. It's gonna go right in here like that. Assembly lube on here. This is gonna go over the shift rod in there, just like that. Should be nice and flat to the friction plate there. And the springs go on with the bolts. Another tip for these, before you crank them on, you want to make sure the threads are started. It's very easy to strip the threads on here, so just start them up before you crank them on. Just gonna put a little bit of assembly lube on here. Alright, we have a brand new gasket. We're gonna grease this up on both sides so that if we have to take this off again, the cover, we can reuse the gasket. Around here, all over the gasket. You can always wipe off the excess grease. Alright. We have our dowel pins in already, so that lines up the gasket for us perfectly. Now we can get the cover on. We cleaned out the cover. Water pump checks out. There is no oil in the coolant, so I figured the water pump was fine. Just gonna use a little assembly lube on there. There's a bearing right here. Alright, just kind of work that in a little bit. Now this cover can go on. You can see it cleaned it all out. Looks really nice. This will just go on right here. All the seals are good. And we might have to rotate the water pump a little bit, like that. And it will pound right on like that. Alright, reed's going on. All right, stator going on next. So we marked these before where the screw holes were, where it was supposed to be lined up. But if we line it up with the line right here, we should be good. So we want to line up the line down here. See the line right there? Line it up with the line right there. Alright, you can see the woodruff key in there. We're going to get the flywheel on next. Just gonna... There we go. That's a little better. We got the bottom end pretty much all done, except for a couple covers. We're going to work on the top end here. So here's the cylinder. We want to hone this out. But first, let's get the power valves disassembled and out of there so we can clean them. And then clean out the whole cylinder once we do the honing. So let's start with the cover right here. We'll get this off first. Try not to rip the gasket. And I already did, so at this point it doesn't matter. You can always make a new one. Alright, you can see power valves moving up and down in there. This is just a mental picture for when you take it apart. Alright, now we want to take off the bolt right here. So here is how that looks in there. There's a little stopper plate right here. Comes out. Take that out. This is just going to pull out here. Like that. Spring. Now you can push this whole rod through like that. Right now you can see this pivoting like that. There's another stopper plate holding the power valves in. So now we can pull these out like so. I'm just gonna keep them like that, and we'll clean them up later. Put everything off to the side like that. Power valves are out. You can see all the oil built up in here, really black. Good time to check for any wear. There's no big divots in here, so that the power valves can't move back and forth easily. You can see in ours it's perfectly smooth. That looks good. So now we can hone this cylinder out. Alright, so to know if you can hone your cylinder out, You're going to take a magnet here and just see if it sticks to the side of the cylinder walls. So a lot of these bikes came with Nicocell plating cylinders, and with the Nicocell, the magnet won't stick to the sides. You don't want to hone Nicocell unless you have the proper equipment. A lot of people recommend a diamond hone for that, but a lot of time that takes off the coating and it's not real good. I never recommend honing out Nicocell. You can, however, use a green pad and just scratch it up a little bit. This is not Nicocell because when you stick the magnet to it, you can see it sticks. So we can actually hone this out, bore it over, and do whatever we want to it. So you can see it, magnet clearly sticks to it. We put a little two-stroke oil on the cylinder walls here. Typically you want to use a ball hone for a two-stroke because of the ports in the cylinder here. But as you can see, this one's just a little too small and I don't have the neck size up. The neck size up I have is too big. So we're going to use this type of hone here. We're just going to go really lightly with it. It doesn't need much. We're just going to go, take it nice and slow. You can hear it getting caught up on the ports a little bit, but alright, cylinder is all honed out, ready to go. We did a couple different rounds just to make sure all the surface was cross-hatched on the cylinder so that the new piston rings can seat. So we're going to dunk this in soapy water and get out all the crud from the hone. That's pretty clean. Now we're going to blow it out with compressed air and get out everything and then blow it off with brake cleaner. Alright, power valves are all reinstalled. You can see those look really, really nice in there, all cleaned up. So what we're going to do next is rotate this spring. We're going to tension it. Stock setting is 1 full revolution clockwise. So you can see the arrow right there. We want to go 1 full revolution clockwise with it, and that will be stock setting. So we'll do that. And then we can get this top end put together and the piston measured up. All right, we got that tension up. Now you can see how responsive that is. Springs right back, super responsive. All right, we have the Pro X piston here. This is the standard bore. So standard bore on this is 54 millimeters. As you can see, arrow points towards exhaust side when you install it. So we've got everything that comes with it, ring, C-clips. Check out what the ring looks like here. It's only a single ring on this. And let's see, is there a number on it? You can install this ring either way, it looks like. There's no taper on the ring and no number. If there's a number on it, you'd face it up. Alright, we're going to quick check the piston ring gap. Just going to shove that down into the cylinder here. About 1 inch down. Like that. You can see the ring gap right there. See that? Take our feeler gauge. And we're just going to measure that gap there. And this one turns out to be 14 thousandths of an inch. So that's right on the money. Alright, so we got our piston all marked. We put the piston on the rod and then put the cylinder over it and then turn the flywheel to make sure that the bridge was right between those two gaps right there. Marked it with a pencil. And we came back with a marker and we marked one dot, 0.3 0.3 inches below the ring line, and then another 0.375 inches below the first dot to the second dot. Those are right in the center, so we're going to drill these out now. We're using a 1/16 inch drill bit. Alright, one hole done. Second hole. Alright, 2 holes drilled. Now we're just going to sand that surface and deburr that. Then quick clean off the surface with a razor blade here. Make sure all that gasket material is off of here. Alright, we're going to lube up the piston using some 2-stroke oil here. Get the bearing all lubed up here. Looks good. Get the piston ring all lubed up and the piston. Alright, again, arrow points towards the exhaust. Let me put this on. We're going to use a little Permatex before we put the gasket on, just for a little extra seal in here. Just in case this isn't perfectly flat or there's little dings in it, this will help that seal. But security. A little bit more lubrication on the piston. Want that nice and lubricated for the first start. So all the studs right here were super loose. So what I'm doing is going around and tightening each one. So what I do is hold this nut down here, tighten another nut onto it, and then that tightens up and you can spin the whole stud here. can see how loose they were. Crazy. And then you can just break that nut off, like that. And all the studs are tight. Dip the O-rings in some oil. Lube those up. So here's the outer ring, outer O-ring. And the inner O-ring. If they're a little bit too small, just stretch them a little. Give them a little tug here, and they'll fit right in like that. Specific torque settings, so we're going to look that up and torque these down. Alright, head nuts are 18 foot-pounds, and then the cylinder nuts were 24 foot-pounds, so torque these down. Crisscross pattern. Perfect. All right, engine is all done, ready to go back in the bike. Let's install it. Alright, we have most of the bike put back together. Everything's hooked up. Clutch is working. Chain is on. Sprockets are on. Pipe is on. So it's coming along. We're going to take a quick look at the carburetor. Make sure the jets in there are correct before we go any further. Pretty clean. Pretty clean. So the bowl looks really good. Let's see what this looks like. So it looks like we're running a 460 main. We'll have to check and see if that's stock. Get that out of there. Let's see what the pilot's at here. Pilot is at 27.5. And that's clogged. Pretty good. Air screw is right down in the corner here. See how many turns out. 1, 2, 3, 3 1/4. Seems like a lot. Make sure the choke is working. Yep, choke is working. See what that needle feels like. Nice and rubbery at the tip, that looks good. Seat looks perfect. Everything looks pretty good. So we can blow this out with some compressed air and some brake cleaner and we should be good to go. Alright, looking at FMF's website here, it says that for 2001, main jet should be 450, pilot should be 27.5, needle stock, clip position second, and air screw 1.5 turns out. So we are running a 460, so that's fine. It's a little bit rich, and that's okay. And then the air screw is really far out. We're going to turn that in to 1.5 turns. Alright, she's all back together. Everything is done except for the oil change, which we're gonna do. Check this thing out. I think it's clean. Hopefully it runs as good as it looks. So this thing takes 750 milliliters of oil using 10W40 wet clutch oil. You don't want to use car oil, you want to use wet clutch oil for motorcycles or ATVs. So let's dump this stuff in. It's perfect right there. All right, we're gonna be adding some 42-to-1. running great, but it's idling up a little bit when you let it idle there for a little bit. So I'm going to check for air leaks around the intake boot. It looks like there's actually coolant coming past the seals on the head. That really sucks. Ooh, that's really hot. There's coolant coming from the spark plug hole. Well, what the heck? That's weird. That's really weird. I wonder if there's something wrong with the head. We might have to take that back off and check it. Don't want to run it too long with a leak like that. Alright, we got the coolant drained out, but you can see coming through the stud right there was coolant, and coming through the spark plug was coolant, so obviously that's not supposed to be happening. So let's see what's going on with this head. Those O-rings in there. Ooh, that's hot. Ooh, there's coolant coming out. Ouch. Huh, everything looks good. All the O-rings are in there perfectly. There wasn't a lot of coolant at the top of the piston or anything. I don't know where that's coming in from. I wonder if the outer gasket failed, this one right here. I don't know how it would. Or there's a possibility that our head is warped as well. Might have to check that. Might look for any cracks as well. Check all that out. Alright, just got done resurfacing the head. So what I did was take 1000 grit sandpaper, tape it to a mirror, a piece of glass, and I just went in a circular motion and got all the blemishes out. So it looked like there was a couple low spots on the outer ridge here and then one on the inner ridge. Went all the way down and we got all those out. Then there's like a little tiny crack. You can see it right there, that little tiny speck right there, that little tiny crack. That was going all the way from here to here, so I think it went past that gasket. But now it's not, so we'll see what happens. We're gonna reinstall it. We've got brand new crush washers too, because coolant was coming through the bolts. We'll see if this works. Got rid of the coolant leak. No more leaking from the head or the spark plug or the bolts. So I think resurfacing that head worked. But now it's like revving up weird. Might be the idle. Let's check. Alright, you can see it's still revving up pretty high. There's gotta be an air leak somewhere. Doing great now. All right, we got her fixed. So what I did was take off the reed cage. I put some gasket maker around the reed cage just to make sure we weren't getting air leaks there. And then I adjusted the air screw in a little bit more. So we're at about 1 turn out on the air screw. I'm getting a little bit less air in there. And then I adjusted the throttle all the way down. It was really high right here. I adjusted the cable all the way down, and that seemed to work. So one of those things helped out a lot, and now it's not revving up. So that's good. It's not leaking anything at all now. No coolant leaking at all, so that's fixed. So I think we're ready for the first ride. Let's see if it shifts in the gear here.
So far so good. Gonna do a little break-in. Absolutely flying.
Alright, first ride, braking ride was pretty good. It's got a little low end bog to it, so we're probably going to end up rejetting the carburetor to what the specs were for the FMF, which would drop it down the main jet to a 450 instead of a 460, and I think we're going to drop the pilot down to a 25 instead of a 27.5. It seems like it's pretty rich on the pilot. We're also going to check the choke mechanism to make sure that's not letting anything in here. I don't want that to be leaking there. Might just quick check that now. But yeah, other than that, it's running great. It idles all the way out, runs good, it goes through all the gears, brakes work, and this thing is really, really fast, so I'm pretty happy with it. Has tons of power for a 125, pretty crazy. So that's going to end today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed the first ride after the rebuild on this thing. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next one, and until next time, we are out.